Welcome to Financial Strategies with Andrew Agemy in Connecticut and Daniel Agemy in Colorado.
Like many baby boomers, I had parents that went through the Depression. And the Depression was a terrible time. If you do any studying of history, with the Depression, people learned to put money in the banks, and you couldn't pull them into the stock market with a team of wild horses. They trusted the bank. The banker was their friend. Their banker was the guy to go to for any kind of help when it came to money. I remember as a kid in the 60s going to the bank with my first trip to the bank, where I put, I think, 25 cents in my savings account. Well, but back then that was huge, and put it in my passbook savings account, got my passbook, and was like, cool, and trusted the bank. But today the bank is a different thing. So today we're talking about your money in the bank. I'm Andrew Agemy.
And I'm Daniel Agemy, and you're listening to Financial Strategies. AAA, we got a lot of good stuff to cover today, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about 3 harsh truths the bank doesn't want you to know about.
Right. Maybe that's what we should have called it, right? It's your money. It's not your money, rather. It's not your money. So the title of today's show is Your Money in the Bank, right? But number 1 is it's not your money. Number 2, it's not money. And number 3 is not in the bank.
What are you talking about, Triple?
I know.
What are you talking about?
Blowing people's minds away at this point, right? What is this? What's he talking about?
Of course,
right?
It's my money. When we were kids, we went on field trips, and we went on a field trip to the bank, and they showed us the vault. They showed us the vault where they keep the money. So your money has to be in the bank.
So you saw your money in the bank. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Well, Daniel, people don't know what people don't know. And that's why Financial Strategies radio show and podcast with Andrew and Daniel Agemy exists. Because if you don't know what you don't know, how are you going to know? Unless somebody tells you, right? But the most egregious thing is when people don't want to know what they don't know, right? And that's called ignorance. Right. And if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. Right. And so the point here is today we're wanting to educate people on how the bank works. And it doesn't probably work the way you think it works.
Yeah. So today is a lot different than when you were putting your 25 cents in the bank. It's a lot different than what people think of banks. Banks are not like the old banks in the movies where Wonderful Life or whatever you think about, they're going and building houses, your neighbor's house with your money. That's not how it works. That is not how it works today. A lot of people don't know when you put money in the bank, it's no longer your money. They're not holding your money for you. There's not only is it not cash in the bank, but it's not your money anymore. Part of when you open up those bank accounts, it's legally the bank's money now, and there's an IOU. At some point in time, they have to repay you. Now, if the bank goes bad, well, it's not sacred. Like if we look at a brokerage account, for example, brokerage companies like Fidelity or Schwab, right? They are custody. That means they're holding your assets for you. When you put the money in the bank, it becomes the bank's money, and all that paperwork you signed originally basically says at some point in time they have to get you the money back. They can do whatever they want. It doesn't go into an account for you. A digital record goes into the account, and it goes into the bank's bank account.
Is that like digital assets? A digital record? Is that like digital assets?
Well, our banking system today is all digital. It might not be like the digital currencies people hear Trump talking about or hear people talking about. It's just a slower digital version, of that. But it's all digital. Yeah, it's not a cash. It's not a cash society. It's already digital money. It's just different than the digital currencies that have been coming out in the past few years.
Right. Well, I interrupted you, Daniel. I'm sorry. You were saying it goes in digitally accounted for within your account.
So it's accounted for digitally, right? It's accounted for digitally, but it goes into the bank's account, for example. The bank takes that money and they can do it with it as they want. And it may be building Joe's house down the street, but more likely they're leveraging that money up and they're buying derivatives, or they're investing in risky assets, or they're building banks, right? You see all these beautiful brand new banks on every street corner that nobody goes into. And you wonder, where did that money come from to build those banks, right?
Right. Right. And it becomes an asset for them. They put the money into the building, into the property. It becomes an asset, right? And that's part of how they're investing their money, how they're, right? And they're making money off that deal. It's not that they need a big building like that, but it gives them a presence. It gives them a shingle out there where people can see and stuff like that. And the worst thing, just where my mind's going with all this stuff you're saying, Daniel, is right how you're putting your money in the bank, and the typical bank today is still paying essentially zero on their accounts. Doesn't mean that you can't get something. You might be able to find a CD, you might be able to find a money market. I'd tell you, there's a lot of people out there that are still having a ton of money in the bank at 0%, essentially. And somebody's making a lot of money on that money, but it's not them. And that's what the bank's doing. It's taking it, it's leveraging their money. And the banker is not your friend, right? The banker is in business to make money for the company. He's a fiduciary for the stockholders of that company, first and foremost. If he tells you he's a fiduciary for you, well, that's secondary to the stockholders of the company. He's got to do what's in the best interest of the stockholders of the company. So, yeah. So this is wow. Talking about this, I know we're going to be blowing some people's minds today, but you're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy, because people don't know what people don't know. And today's topic is your money in the bank. And we're talking about, is it really your money? Well, we've got a lot of things to talk with you about and go through from that standpoint. And we have a paper that we'd love to be able to put in your hand today to be able to help you understand a little bit more about this, and especially with like what happens regarding your retirement, right? And so the papers today that we have is protect yourself from the dangers of inflation, right? Because when you're talking about putting the money in the bank at zero, or even if you're getting 3, 4, 5% on a CD because you got a special rate, right? Inflation is higher than that. So protect yourself from the dangers of inflation is the paper we have. And you can have it for free by calling us at 800-725-7616, 800-725-7616. You can call them now for your free copy. You call and talk it. You're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy, this father-son team coming to you to help you be able to be better stewards of your money so that you can retire and stay retired. Daniel, so this is not your money. You're putting it in a bank, and they're taking it basically away from you. They're giving you a promissory note for that. It's kind of like checking your coat in a nightclub or something like that, right? And they give you a little ticket. It's not your coat anymore. It's in there, right? And you can't have it unless you come back, unless you produce that ticket. But
well, it's not really like that, because the nightclub is holding your coat. So it would be like if you went to the nightclub, and that's what everybody thinks about. It's like that nightclub where they're holding your coat. That's a great example. Not at all. It would be like if they took that coat, rented it out while you were in the nightclub, let people borrow it, leveraged it up, maybe took loans out against your coat, things like that while you were away, right? That's what it would be like. And so if they can't get it back when you want it, then they just say, oh, well, we have a contract that says it was our coat until you came back. So sorry, somebody didn't return it, right? So why do we think if banks are these leveraged institutions, they're a lot like a hedge fund, right? If you go into the bank and you give them $100, they keep $10, and they can do whatever they want. They can leverage up that other $90.
Right.
So maybe they lend out $90 to somebody else who puts that into their bank, and then that gets leveraged up 90. So you can see how the leverage on top of the leverage really makes these more like a hedge fund than the safe institution you think of a bank, right?
Right.
So why do we think banks are safe? Well, we think banks are safe because the government backs up the bank, right? With FDIC insurance.
Oh yeah, that is going to be the best, right? I mean, we don't have to worry about it, right, Daniel? As long as we're below the $250,000 mark, the FDIC's got our back.
Yeah, and
no, It's not always that way, right?
I mean, the FDIC has done a pretty good job of backing banks up, right? But
Right.
if you think that the bank is already leveraged, you can't think of the bank as the safe institution. So you're really counting on
Right.
the FDIC. But then
Right.
where does the money in the FDIC come from? Technically, it's banks are paying insurance
Right.
so that if there's a problem that happens to them, it goes into this fund. And then if there's a problem, the fund backs up the banks that go bad. And it's worked well for small banks. But if a huge bank like JP Morgan went bad, it would bankrupt the FDIC.
Right.
And so now you're saying, oh, so the bank is not really this safe institution we all think it is, right? The nice person down at the bank, you go give them their money,
Right.
and they'll give it back to you when you want it. They can freeze the money. They can make you wait 30 days. They can, not even if they're going bad, right? So we have to think
Right.
about these things
Right.
when we live in a chaotic world where weird things like that seem to be happening more and more.
Exactly. And I agree with you 100% with that. And the thing about FDIC is that, first of all, we remember 2008 and the financial crisis, and there were 5 banks that went bankrupt, but they were, quote unquote, too big to fail, right? So the government came in and bailed them out from that standpoint. Just a side note is there was only one insurance company. And the reason why that one insurance company went bad was because they were investing in derivatives and other things that they should have been investing in as an insurance company. And so these banks went bad. And so in the past 35 years, FDIC has almost gone bankrupt twice. And if we have another 2008 or financial crisis, I'm convinced they're going to go bankrupt. Then what are they going to do? They're going to go to the government to bail them out. And the government's already bankrupt, but the government has a printing press, which we're going to talk a little bit more in a little bit here. They have a printing press. As long as that printing press is working, that's not an issue, right? Because the government will print some more money and bail everybody out like they did last time, right? But still, is that what you think? Is that the safety that you really want from that? And there's more to come. We're going to have to take a break, but we have some ways that you can have safety, that you can have security, that you can have consistency in other ways than what you may normally think. So you want to come back and join us. Well, in the meantime, we have a book that we'd like to give you and our listening audience. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. A great little book. It's not very long. Classic book that it goes back to scrolls that they found from Babylon hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, in how to be able to gain wealth and be able to keep wealth. And we love to be able to put this easy read book in your hands by calling us at 800-725-7616. It's your for free by calling us at 800-725-7616 for your free copy of The Richest Man in Babylon. First 5 first-time callers, call now, and we'll be right back after this.
Do you have any questions for me about retirement income source?
I just want to make sure I can invest well enough to have enough income, enjoy my retirement.
We build a custom retirement plan based around your income and goals.
How do I know I can trust you?
Building trust does take time, but our investment advisory arm is comprised of fiduciaries, which means our obligation is to you, so you can enjoy your retirement with a little more income stability.
I'm in.
That's 2 out of 3.
This is Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy.
Once upon a time, in the sweltering summer of 1971, President Nixon found himself in a golden pickle. The U.S. economy was struggling like a cat trying to swim in molasses, and Nixon needed a way to turn things around faster than you can say, "I'm not a crook." On a fateful weekend in August, Nixon gathered his economic dream team at Camp David. It was like a financial superhero meetup, minus the capes. Treasury Secretary John Connally, the cowboy boot-wearing Texan, was there. So was the future Fed Chairman Paul Volcker, towering over everyone at 6'7", a veritable economic Goliath. As they huddled in secret, the rest of the world was blissfully unaware of the monetary earthquake about to shake the global piggy bank. Nixon and his team were plotting to do the unthinkable. Cut the tie between the almighty dollar and gold. On Sunday night, August 15th, Nixon interrupted America's regularly scheduled programming to drop his economic bombshell. In a move that would make King Midas weep, he announced that the U.S. was abandoning the the gold standard. It was like telling the world that the tooth fairy had gone on strike. I'm Andrew Agemy.
And I'm Daniel Agemy, and you're listening to Financial Strategies. And today we're talking about the 3 harsh truths about your bank. AAA, that's a pretty good story. I don't know. Wow, good job. I don't know if a lot of people realize we're all busy with life, right? We're busy with life. We don't think about what's the value of the money? What's the value of these dollars, this paper that I have in my hand? And prior to that decision from Nixon and his team of superheroes, the dollar was actually backed by something. It had already been devalued somewhat, but it was actually backed by gold, and it had some intrinsic value. It had some backing. And after that, it kind of became the petrodollar, but it's basically, it's not backed. It's called fiat currency because the value is by law. It's decreed. It's given by the government, right? That's the only value the paper has, is that the government says it has value. You could say it's backed up by our aircraft carriers, right? The U.S. government aircraft carriers, because if you decide you want to use something else, they will come after you with their guns.
Right. Prior to that point, right, you could essentially trade in your dollar for gold, was at least the concept. Whether logistically you could really do that or not, that's another thing, right? But that was the idea. And my understanding, Daniel, is that actually 10 years earlier, JFK was looking at doing that before he was assassinated. Actually, I heard some reports that was part of the idea why he was assassinated, because he was talking about doing that, and the powers that be didn't want that. But nevertheless, Nixon did it. And what happened at that point? Well, from my perspective, that's when the government started their printing press, right? Their printing press, that they just print money. Whenever they need more money, they print it. Right. And then that's why today, Daniel, I was thinking the other day, right? Your mom went out and got some gas in her truck. I mean, it's maybe a 20-gallon tank in her Ranger. And she said, oh, I didn't know what to tell the people when they asked me how much I wanted, Andrew. So I just $30 came into my mind, and it only put like a half a tank in or what. And I went through the mathematics and said, your tank is this size, and if it's this much, tell them $75. And then I thought, and I said, in 1973, that would have been well less than $10. That would have been like maybe $5 or $7.50 or something like that to fill that truck up. And then it hit me how much different it was. I mean, I know about inflation and everything, but that's part of what that does. When you're taking off of a standard, when people don't have standards in life, whether it's their own personal life, when money doesn't have standards, where there are no standards, everything falls apart, right? And that's what happened in our society. Standards have gone out the window because it's thought that there are no absolutes. And what you have to ask yourself, is that an absolute? Right? And because there are absolutes. And when you know those absolutes and the standards, and in this case, Nixon took it off the absolute standard of gold. So therefore, now it is just what the government says it's worth. And the danger of that is the government could come in and they could say, okay, now this dollar now represents a penny, right? And the $100 that you have in your bank account is now worth only $10, right? And they could come in, they could say that because they could change the rules if they want, because they're the ones that make the rules. So, and that's what leads to inflation, right? That the less value that the dollar has, the more dollars you need. And so that's why a house today, that's a $500,000 house, that pre-COVID was a $350,000 house, because the values have increased. And it's not that the house is worth more, it's just it takes more dollars. But now the $500,000 is worth today what $350,000 was 5 years ago. So you're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy. Today's topic is your money in the bank, or the 3 harsh truths about your money in the bank. You're listening to Financial Strategies. This is father and son team, Andrew and Daniel Agemy, coming at you because people don't know what people don't know. We have a paper we'd love to give you that's talking about this inflation a little bit more. It's just a few pages, help educate you, so that you can know something that people around you don't know, and that you can actually make smarter, better decisions. It's called Protect Yourself from the Dangers of Inflation. You can have that paper for free for calling us at 800-725-7616. 800-725-7616 for your free copy. Protect yourself from the dangers of inflation. Today's topic, your money in the bank. It's not yours, it's not money, and it's not in the bank. So, Daniel, so we came off the gold standard. Oh, but before I'm going to turn it over to you, Daniel, I'm just going to give a couple quotes here from J.P. Morgan. Said, gold is money, everything else is credit. And then Herbert Hoover has reportedly said, we have gold because we cannot trust governments. Ooh. That's kind of why Bitcoin was started.
Yeah. And AAA, money is supposed to be, you trade your time for money, right? You go to work and you trade your time for money. So when there's no value to it, it's just by decree, it's fiat. What ends up happening? Well, there's a website, WTF happened in 1980 and 1971, right? And it shows statistics of when we came off the gold standard, and it shows inflation, and it barely moves from the early 1900s, and then it spikes and it just goes straight up after 1971. It shows obesity. Why does that have anything to do with it? It has things you wouldn't think are connected. It shows how long hours people have to work. It shows the charts for all these different things that just go in a straight up line after 1971. And why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Because the thing that we say is value, the dollar, we trade our time for it, we spend our time collecting it. It's what we retire on. It's not of value.
Right.
It's not of value. It's just decreed. It's by law. It's fiat. And so that's why when we're talking here, people can go check that out. WTF happened in 1971 and look at the charts, and it's insane. The health, how long you have to save for a home. Both spouses having to work, all these kinds of things. It just goes in a straight line right after 1971. And you could say it has something to do with it or it doesn't. But when you take something that is supposed to be a store of value, we work and we get some economic value for it. So we have to do something. We can go buy something, or we can store it in a form, right? We can store that value. And typically money has been what you store that value in. So you can use it, you can save it, you can grow it, and you can use it at another time. But when the thing you're storing it in has no value and it can be printed, it's like if we had a pizza and there's 4 slices and you feel pretty good about your one piece, and then the government says, we're going to chop this into 8 pieces, you still have a piece, right? Yeah. So it's a lot smaller. And then they say 16 pieces, and then they say 1,600 pieces, and then they say 16,000 pieces, right? Your piece is tiny now. It's barely, and that's what's happening. That's what's happening to money. And so for people, why we're saying that these three harsh truths about your money is, when it's in the bank, number one, your money in the bank, well, it's not your money if it's in the bank, it's the bank's money. And 2, that's why we're saying it's not money, because there's nothing backing it up. After we came off the gold standard, it's just by decree, right? And inflation has gone, inflation, the way it's measured, it's about, 3% a year. But when we look at how the value, the money has been devalued, it's a lot more than 3%. They just don't count devaluation in inflation. Right. And this is real interesting, Daniel, because when you're talking about this, and we look at the Bible, being a student of the Bible and things that Jesus said, and he's talking about the parable of the talents. And Jesus talked more about money than any other one topic. Not that money's important, but money gets people's attention so that they can get the better truths that he's trying to bring across to them from that standpoint. And he told the parable of the talents of one guy that was given 5 talents, and he went out and he doubled it. And then another guy was given 2 talents. He went out and he doubled it. Another guy was given 1, and he went and he stuck it in the ground.
And Jesus condemns the guy that stuck it in the ground because he said he should at least put it in the bank so that he could have got interest over that period of time. But my contention is that the bank today is worse than the ground was back then, because at least then inflation wasn't like it was today. And if you put $5,000 in the ground, well, today you got 10 years later, you got $5,000 worth of purchasing power. Whereas you put $5,000 in the bank 10 years ago, today you got what? Maybe 5,000. What did I say? I said 5,000 in. You got 2,500 of purchasing power. You got $1,000 of purchasing power today in equivalents, right? So it's not the same thing, and we have to be careful about what we're looking at. And again, just what I want to throw here, one thing that I'm always saying is percentages fool us. People are fooled by percentages. We have to look at percentages. We have to understand dollars and real purchasing power. So I see it's time for us to take another break, Daniel. And I can see you're chomping at the bit there, man. That's great. Hold that thought, right? We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. In the meantime, I'd like to offer those that are listening to the audience. Well, first of all, I want to tell you that you listen to Financial Strategies that Andrew and Daniel Agemy. This father-son team coming to you because people don't know what people don't know. And we're able to, between the two of us, we have these synergistic ways about us to be able to give you information that you may not get anywhere other place. So we love to get it to you here. And one of the things that we want to give to you today is a book that we have called The Richest Man in Babylon. And for the next 5 first-time callers, we'd love to put this book in your hand. Easy read book that goes back to how they did things and how they gained wealth and saved money, gained wealth back in Babylon thousands of years ago. So we'd love to be able to put this in your hand for free by calling us 800-725-7616, 800-725-7616. Today's topic on Financial Strategies is your money in the bank, the 3 harsh truths about the money, about your money in the bank. And we'll be right back after this.
Important financial questions. Are you feeling confident that you have enough money saved to enjoy a stress-free retirement?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
That's where Retirement Income Sources investment advisory arm comes in. We exist to help you invest your money smartly.
I'm struggling to accept my retirement without a steady paycheck. So can you help me invest into a profitable revenue plan?
Absolutely. We have top advisors nationwide who have a fiduciary obligation to you, helping you generate retirement income.
This is Financial Strategy with Andrew and Daniel Agemy.
AAA, banks do some pretty interesting things with your money. In 2012, there was this huge buyer that just kept buying up all these derivatives. And people were like, who is this guy? Who has so much money? And the chats going through Bloomberg were going back and forth. And they started calling this guy the London Whale because nobody knew who it was. And nobody knew how someone had so much money to be buying all these credit derivative swaps. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger. There was about a $10 billion position before they realized a trader at JP Morgan Chase figured out how to get around the protocols, the safety, the risk protocols of the bank, and was convinced that he would be able to recoup the money he had lost, and kept doubling down. JP Morgan Chase lost $6.1 billion and ate it up, and no one knew about the London Whale. I'm Daniel Agemy.
I'm Andrew Agemy. You're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy. This father and son team coming to you with decades worth of experience to be able to help you know what you don't know. Today's topic is your money in the bank. The 3 harsh truths about your money in the bank. And we've talked about how it's not yours, it's not money, and it's not in the bank. Daniel, are you telling us this story because it's not in the bank?
I'm saying this one because I keep comparing banks to hedge funds compared to what you think of the old-fashioned bank or where they're building homes with your money for your neighbors, right? That's the beautiful story. Your money's sitting in the bank and they'll lend it to another person or they'll build a home with it. But that's not what the big banks today have turned into. They have quadrillions of dollars in derivatives. No one can even compute the amount of derivatives that are going on between these huge banks today. And that's an example. Chase is big enough to eat a loss of $6 billion. They just ate the loss.
Because they didn't want to let anybody know. They kept quiet.
Lose $8 billion. $6 billion, right? And it's just gone. Shows that the bank is not safe. And again, it's not in the bank, right? We talked about leverage and how if you go and you put $100 in the bank, they're required to keep $10 for reserve and they can do whatever they want. They can lend out, they can trade around with that other money, but the money's not in the bank. There's not cash in the bank. Has anybody gone to the bank and tried to withdraw a substantial amount of money, more than $1,000?
You have to order it. You have to come back Thursday, right, or whatever. But Daniel, listen, give us like a 30-second definition of derivatives, something like that. Because you're using the word, right? I know there's a lot of people in our listening audience. They heard the word, but they're not certain what it is.
Well, we'll say a derivative is when you are betting money and you're saying, I'll give you the money later on. So you can use multiples of what you actually have. It's a way to get leverage on the money you actually have. So if you win, then you don't have to give them the money you promised, right? So that would be like you, Andrew, being like, I'm going to bet $7 billion that the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. And as long as you are right and you don't have to come up with the $7 billion to put down as collateral, you're fine. The difficulty comes in if you're wrong. Where are you going to get the $7 billion, right? That's kind of what the derivatives. You didn't have to put down the $7 billion to make that bet. You're making that bet assuming you can come up with that money. Everything is fine as long as you win, right?
Right. So you're using the word make that bet. So is it safe for the people in our listening audience to recognize that it sounds like you're saying it's literally a gamble?
Yeah, I'm sure the people placing those derivatives and those bets are not calling it a gamble, but yeah, it's using extreme amounts of leverage to put your opinion on outcomes. Okay.
Nevertheless, it's nowhere near as safe as banks used to be. It's the concept. And one of the ways why they get able to get around that and away from that is because they're for the account holders, they're depending upon the FDIC insurance. Right. And that's what happened with AIG, the insurance company especially, that went bankrupt during the financial crisis because they were doing derivatives all over the place and leveraging this money, and they lost. And that's the problem. Like you said, when you lost, if like anything else, right? If you're making money, that's great. If you're winning, if you're at the casino and you're winning, everything's going well, right? But then when it goes the other direction, that's when you end up in poverty. You're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew Daniel Agemy. Today's topic is your money in the bank. The 3 harsh truths about your money in the bank. And we've got a paper for you that will be able to help you understand things and be able to build for retirement. Because, Andrew, what's all this stuff that to do about retirement? Well, let us give you this paper, Building Blocks of Retirement. Love to be able to put this in your hands because it's going to help you understand about using your money and what you need to do with your money to be able to build for retirement or be able to stay in retirement, how to retire and stay retired. We'd love to be able to put this in your hands for free by calling us at 800-725-7616, 800-725-7616. We're all about education here. We want to educate you to be able to make a smart decision because people don't know what people don't know. When they make decisions from ignorance, they don't make good decisions. We want you to make good decisions with your money, good decisions with your retirement so that you retire only once. If you're going to go back to work, it's because you want to, not because you have to. 800-725-7616 gives you the paper, Building Blocks of Retirement. Yours for free. Call now. Daniel, what's next?
So The reason we're giving people this information is not because we think you shouldn't have any money in the bank, right? AAA,
Right.
You have a bank
Right.
account, I have a bank account,
Yep.
but it's
Yep.
being
Several.
wise
Yep.
stewards. And it's good to have diversification, right? It's good to look at credit unions, but we want people
Right.
to know what they're doing. We just talked about the derivatives. We talked about the bets. Now, if you want to go to the casino and you want to gamble your money, that's up to you. If you want to go in your
Right.
brokerage account and you want to buy options and leverage up, that's up to you. But when you put your money in the bank, you're not expecting the bank to be doing that with your money, right? So we
Right.
want to let you know that is actually what's going on with money in the bank because it's their money. And we want to let you
Right.
know what's going on, and then you can make a wise decision. So these three things: your money in the bank, number one, it's not your
Right.
money, it's the bank's money. Number two, it's
Right.
not money at all. And I think we went into that where it came off real bad.
Smoke and mirrors.
It's just
Right.
by decree. And
Right.
it's not
Yeah.
actually in
Yeah.
the bank either. So
Right.
we want people to understand those things so they can make wise decisions. Now, AAA, let's talk about some of the alternatives to banks, some of the alternatives to CDs, some things that can give
Good
you
idea.
better returns, and some things people may not know about the difference between banking and custody.
Yeah, that's great, Daniel. And as a financial firm, Agemy Financial Strategies, Agemy Wealth Advisors, we view ourselves as the anti-bank solution to things. And again, like Daniel said, not that you get rid of all your banks, but there's other ways to be doing these things. And so the first key with the steps in regard to all this stuff is making sure that you have an emergency fund and making sure that you have liquid cash and cash that you can get to, not necessarily, it could be in the bank, but maybe not in the bank. Maybe I know one guy that had $15,000 in a sock drawer, right? I know another gal that had a ton of money in her freezer. Right? She'd put a lot of money in her freezer, right? You know, you could have it locally, right? You could have it in an insurance policy, right? To where you can get the money out within a week or two, and the life insurance policy can provide some liquid cash. And if you don't need it, it's going to be growing tax-free and whatnot. But having some emergency money. Now, here's a key with this that I want to just throw out there when we're talking about this, that typically prior to retirement, 6 months worth of emergency savings is a good amount of money. And I like to have my money in life insurance policies, the bulk of that in life insurance policies, not in the bank, because it's safer. I think it's guaranteed better insurance, and because it's earning money tax-free. And it's also being leveraged because if I die, instead of getting $1.50, right? But as you get closer to retirement, you don't need that because your retirement savings becomes your emergency. Why do you have an emergency fund? To get income, right? To get money to pay the bills. Well, if you're in retirement and when you already got the money to pay the bills, right? Yeah, sure, there's stuff that comes up, but it's not as prior to being retired, when you could lose your job and be out of work for 6 months and that kind of thing like that, not having any income coming in. So once you built your wealth, it's another deal. It's a whole nother situation than while you're building your wealth. That's what we're always talking about. Accumulation phase of life is different than the distribution phase of life. So, but it's important to be able to have money available to be able to do projects with, or to be able to, for emergencies. But sometimes I see hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank and say, well, it's for an emergency. Well, what in the world, what kind of emergency could you ever possibly have that's going to cost $200,000 or $300,000? I mean, even if all the emergencies in the world, your roof caves in, your furnace blows up, your driveway goes to pot, all these, it's not going to cost you $200,000 to fix all that stuff, right? And there's also other ways to handle that besides actually having cash available, which we like the concept, and this is not the time for it, but home equity line of credit creates cash flow for people on that front. But anyway, there's a lot of things to look at. And the key is a good chess player thinks 7 moves ahead. And so the key is being able to have strategies that you can have in place to be, no matter what contingencies happen, you're in a good position. And that's what we're trying to bring across to you today, is help you understand the difference, how you can do that. And that's part of the difference between a boutique financial firm and a fast food financial firm. And if you want to know what I'm talking about that, go back and listen to our show, Fast Food or Boutique Restaurant. And that just played a couple weeks ago. But That will give you a great idea there. But anyway, I see that we're coming up fast to another break. You're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy. Today's topic is your money in the bank. The 3 harsh truths about your money in the bank. And we love to be able to put in your hand a book, easy read book called The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a classic book. Tony Robbins says, hey, he recommends it to everybody. I recommend it to everybody. Daniel recommends it to everybody, right? Whether you're a kid, you're 18 years old, or what's kind of like ageless, who can use this book, because there's going to be truths in here, almost like the Bible from that standpoint, but not anywhere near as good. But nevertheless, got stuff in there that's really good. And we love to be able to put that in your hands for free by calling us at 800-725-7616. First 5 callers, first-time callers, 800-725-7616 for your free copy. Call now.
Strategy with Andrew and Daniel Agemy.
And he rolled up $700 and lit it like a cigarette, and it just burned up in smoke. Now, who in the world would burn $700? Who in the world would throw away $700? People do it all the time. I hear it all the time. Oh, I have to keep $20,000 in my bank so I don't pay for my checking account. What are they going to charge you on your checking account? $100, $200, $300 a year? If you take that $20,000 and put it so that you're making money on it instead of the bank making money on it, you could make $1,000 a year. If you have to pay $300 a year for your checking account and you make $1,000 a year on your $20,000, you're making $700 net. But people don't do that. They burn their money. I'm Andrew Agemy.
And I'm Daniel Agemy, and you're listening to Financial Strategies. Today, we're talking about the 3 harsh truths about your money in the bank. And we'll do your money in air quotes, right, AAA?
Right.
That's the age-old question, AAA. Are you really losing the money just because you're not earning it? If you're giving up money, but you never had it, did you really lose it? I would
well,
say yes.
One thing about
if you're giving up the money, if you're giving up the money, then you could have had that. And so it is just like burning that $700 like you're talking about.
I mean, who would go to work? Well, people do this all the time with their 401k plans. They don't participate in their 401k plans because I'm not going to be there long enough or whatever, but their 401k matches them. And so if you don't take the match, you're giving up part of your paycheck. This is, again, part of your paycheck for your money. I mean, what we're always talking about, do you want your money sitting on the beach sipping pina coladas or your favorite beverage? Or do you want to be on the beach sipping your favorite beverage, right? And in order for you to be on the beach, you have to make your money work hard for you. You got to put it in a sweatshop. And when it's in the bank, it's not in a sweatshop, right? And Daniel, baby boomers are notorious for wanting the best, wanting the most that they can get for best bang for their buck. And our parents could take Social Security. Our parents went go collect the Social Security. They just went down and collected Social Security. Never thought about, when can I collect? 62. Okay, I'll collect now. Or they didn't care how much they were going to get. But baby boomers, there's become this whole thing about when's the best time to collect for Social Security, because baby boomers brought that about. And that's what baby boomers are. So when I hear a baby boomer talk about, oh, I have to keep $20,000 in the bank so I don't pay interest, I said, what are you kidding me? That's right. So, so that's the thing, right? The bank is making money, but I like people making money instead of the bank making money, right? And I guess it comes from my fiduciary background where I'm working for my clients rather than working for stockholders. And the bank is working for stockholders, not their clients, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So Well, so let's talk about what are some alternatives. Well, an alternative is segregated accounts. The banks are not segregated accounts, right? The bank segregated accounts are going to allow you to be able to put your money in, and your money is your money. It's there, and it's just like sitting in your account. Right, Daniel?
Yeah, exactly. It's custody rules are like the Holy Grail, whereas that means they're holding your money for you. It's not their money. They're holding it for you. They can't lend it out without your permission. They can't leverage it up without your permission. They can't spend it without your permission, right? Segregated means that it's in your account with your name on it, and it belongs to you. So people have to be careful with that. You put it in the bank, and it's the bank's money until you come and ask for it back, and then you got the IOU, and hopefully they redeem that IOU, right?
Right.
Hopefully we're not going through some crazy financial crisis or the bank's in trouble and they can't afford to give you your money back. But with segregation, you don't have to worry about that. Even if the brokerage company, so say it's Fidelity and they go bankrupt, they are holding your assets. So because Fidelity went bankrupt, that doesn't mean your money's affected. The new company, your assets can still be transferred out of the bankrupt Fidelity and they can go to Schwab, and Schwab will have your assets because they're holding those. It's not part of the bankruptcy. Whereas with the bank, if they go bankrupt, your money's in the bankruptcy.
Right.
Other than FDIC insurance, right?
Right. Well, right. So the key is making sure your money is set up properly. And when Daniel's talking about a custodial account, that's very much like your 401, your IRA, right? You roll over your 401k into an IRA. Your 401k is owned by the company. The money is yours, but the plan is owned by the company. You roll it out when you're 59 and a half or older into an IRA, and then the IRA is someplace where whoever is holding that IRA money, now you can do whatever you want with that as far as invest it however you want instead of by the rules of your company. The IRA is a custodial account. Well, in the same way, Fidelity or Schwab or whatever, Vanguard, whatever, when they have these accounts, these brokerage accounts, so to speak, managed accounts, the money is segregated money. So it's set aside and it actually is your money. So that's a huge thing to be taken in consideration when you're dealing with money and looking at your money. And we want to let you know that you're listening to Financial Strategies within your Daniel Agemy. Today's topic is your money in the bank, the 3 harsh truths about your money in the bank. And we love talking to you about this. We have a paper that we'd like to give you to help you understand how to build toward being retired, how to build toward retiring and staying retired. It's called Building Blocks of Retirement. Love to put this in your hand. Easy read paper that's going to be able to help you understand how to plan toward and strategize toward retirement. You can have this paper for free by calling us at 800-725-7616, 800-725-7616. You're listening to Financial Strategies because people don't know what people don't know. This father and son team coming to you to help educate you so you can make smart decisions so that you can retire and stay retired. Daniel, we just have a few minutes left in this show today. It's going by really fast. And as usual, it's fun doing this with you, man. And we still have a few things to talk about, right? Because how can people make 5, 6, 7% on their money? I guess that's probably a good thing to answer for our listening audience.
Yeah. Banks are making 7+% on your money. So if they're earning that kind of money on your money, how come you're not seeing any of it, right? Maybe if you got a CD, you're earning something, but you're not earning anything in your checking. You're not earning anything in that savings account, right? So where's that money going? So there's a lot of different things, right? There's alternatives to CDs. There's alternatives to banks. You can use things within a brokerage account, which again, we're talking about custody rules where it's sacred. That's yours. And you can buy CD alternatives. You can buy U.S. Treasury bonds. Are not bonds, notes or bills, right? You can buy notes or bills. So they're short term. You could probably get 4 to 5.5 or 4 to 4.5% on those things. And it's the safest asset, right, on earth, the U.S. Treasury note, because the U.S. government has a money printer. They can always give you your money back. If you want to look at things that give you more than that type of return, you can go out and you can look at good, strong corporate bonds, right? Companies that will take your money. You lend
Guarantee
them their
your
money.
Yeah.
You can trade it if you need the money. You get paid a little bit more, right? So you have this spectrum, but now you're getting paid more. Now you're maybe getting 5, 6, 7% perhaps on these types of things. So there's different things you can do. But the key is the diversification, right? AAA, you talked earlier about how some people have cash set aside. That's a great thing. You still have the problem of that pizza where they keep cutting it into smaller and smaller pieces. You still have that with the cash, but at least you have something for immediate emergencies. The ATMs get shut off. The ATMs don't work. The bank has a hold, whatever. You have some stuff. But there's other things you can do. People can own physical gold. People can go own allocated gold. We talked about how important the allocated in the brokerage account is. It's still, you got to be careful what gold you're buying if you're buying it in your brokerage account. You need allocated gold so it has your name on it.
Right. You have to be very careful with gold. Yeah.
And then when we look at what we call monetary hedges, right? So if we look at your money, if we look at money from when the Federal Reserve started in 1913 till today, it lost that dollar, that money lost about 97% of its purchasing power.
Right.
That's insane. It happened over a long period of time. So people are like, oh, that's why you hear your grandparents. Now I feel like the grandparent because I say it. It's not just it's faster and hamster. I used to buy a Coke for this, or I used to buy that. That's your money being devalued. And now it's not the grandparents, it's the 30-something-year-old that's saying it because it's happening so fast now. You don't have to wait a whole lifetime to see it. It's happening quick, right? So you got some monetary hedges. And we like things. We like Bitcoin. I get that's not for everybody. It's done very, very well. There's other things. You can use gold. So gold, historically, you look back over centuries, right? It's done very well at keeping your purchasing power. But you can do things like royalty and streaming companies, right? You can own businesses that have cash flow. Now you're not depending on the dollar because there's an income stream, right? Or it's based off of gold and you have a tangible asset now. You have a productive asset now. And these things can do, if gold keeps up with inflation, maybe these do 1 to 5x what gold does over periods of time, which means you're doing better than just keeping your purchasing power, right? You're actually getting a little bit of leverage on top of the purchasing power. And just quick, I know we're out of time here, but to put a visualization, to give people a visualization with what we're talking about, if we're losing 3% in CPI, which is kind of around what the government says we have, about 3% inflation a year.
It's not real inflation, it's what the government says inflation is,
If we use that kind of 3% range, then what's happening is if you had $100,000 sitting in the bank account today, basically in 15 years, that would be $67,000 worth of purchasing power. And that's only 15 years. That's not talking about what you're talking about, AAA, about, burning $700. That's not talking about what you could, that's just what's going on with inflation on government numbers. So you got to keep that in mind. If you've got that 100 grand sitting in the bank, what purchasing power are you going to have in 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years? What is it going to be able to buy you?
Okay, so Daniel, real quick, right? I'm a car guy, and you go back, I've been looking at some things, right? A Mustang from 1966 costs $4,000 roughly, 1966. And that car today in good shape would sell for 40 grand, right? So 10 times, right? And basically that's just like keeping up. That's like, what if you were to buy that car brand new today, it costs $40,000. And so that's just keeping up with it, kind of thing. But we have to close out. We could keep going here, but listen,
those real assets, right? Those real assets that can store value, look for things that can store the value, look for things that will pay you compared to the bank just leveraging up your money and making the money off of your money and giving you nothing.
Right. And that's what the stock market, when people are talking about the S&P 500, it's just kind of paper, kind of like the bank. There's nothing back in it. So anyway, what I want to leave our listening audience with as we close here, what I want to do is, listen, here's the thing. When you're out there shopping for a bank, for a place to put your money, place to put your 401k, place to put your IRA, whatever, an advisor, whatever, here's the thing to be looking for, guys. Just like you heard this word fiduciary thrown around all the time. Fiduciary is somebody that has to act in your best interest. Now, there's true fiduciaries and there's fiduciaries who aren't what I consider true fiduciary, right? But a true fiduciary and your money in a custodian account. That's the thing to be looking for. The bank accounts are not custodian and they're not true fiduciaries. So look for a true fiduciary with putting your money in a custodian account. And that's the first foundation, fundamental of making sure that your money is going to be in good shape should things fall apart, whatever the case may be. Listen, you've been listening to Financial Strategies with Daniel Agemy. This father-son team coming to you today with Your Money in the Bank, the 3 harsh truths about money in the bank, your money in the bank. And we love to give you a partner with today with the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, yours for free. While calling us at 800-725-7616. The next 5 first-time callers, 800-725-7616. We want you to be able to make smart decisions. We believe that an educated retiree is a happy and stress-free retirement. Will help them be able to retire and stay retired. And until next time, keep smiling.